Jim talked for a long while, over weeks. He told many stories of misunderstanding, miscommunication, self-reproach, underachievement, missed chances, angry people, and risky behavior. But he also told stories of adventure and kindness, of intuition and charm and energy and enthusiasm. He told stories of big dreams and high hopes and big disappointments as well. Baffled and frustrated, he never blamed anyone but himself. He was a very likable guy, even though he didn't like himself very much. That first day I began to tell Jim about ADD. You see, I said, it might be that you're not a screw-up or a loser at all, and that you do not have an unconscious wish to sabotage yourself. It might be that you have a neurological condition called attention deficit disorder. As I explained to Jim what attention deficit disorder was, I watched him. He leaned forward in his chair and looked right at me. He began to nod his head at the mention of each new symptom. An excited look came over the face that had been so harried when we first met. When I was a kid, he broke in, it was always Earth to Jim, or Where's Jim, or Jim, why don't you just shape up? My parents and my teachers just thought I was lazy. Why didn't anybody tell me about this ADD thing before? People haven't really known about it very much until fairly recently, I answered.
It's not surprising that although the syndrome we now call ADD has been around for centuries, it was simply lumped together with all other bad behaviors. It was not until this century that it began to be recognized as a medical condition. Although it is hard to say who first defined the syndrome, credit usually goes to British pediatrician George Frederick Still, who, in a series of lectures to the Royal College of Physicians in 1902, described some children in his medical practice who were difficult to control, showing signs of lawlessness, lacking inhibitory volition, and in general being obstreperous, dishonest, and willful. He hypothesized that the condition was not the result of bad parenting or moral turpitude, but rather was biologically inherited or due to injury at birth. The theme of injury at birth and brain damage continued in the 30s and 40s in the idea of the brain-injured child. Even when no actual evidence of neurological impairment could be found, brain damage was invoked to explain uncontrollable behavior. It was during these decades that stimulant medication was first tried successfully to help contain the behavior of some of these children. Other terms began to appear. Some were quite descriptive, such as organic drivenness. Others were rather amorphous and bleak, like minimal brain dysfunction. In the early 1960s, the symptom of hyperactivity began to be separated from any notion of brain damage. Stella Chess and others began to write about the hyperactive child syndrome. Chess saw the symptoms as part of a physiologic hyperactivity, whose causes were rooted in biology rather than the environment. By the 1970s, many major researchers were investigating the syndrome of hyperactivity. Virginia Douglas, in Canada, began to look broadly at the symptoms associated with hyperactivity and found 4 major traits to account for the clinical picture. 1. Deficits in attention and effort. 2. Impulsivity. 3. Problems in regulating one's level of arousal. And 4. The need for immediate reinforcement. In large part due to her work, in 1980, the syndrome was renamed Attention Deficit Disorder. In the decade since that time, research has ballooned. Probably the most up-to-date and definitive account of the history and current state of the field is to be found in a book written by one of the great researchers in the area, Russell Barkley. His book is entitled simply Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder.
Is ADD common? Jim asked me that day when he first came for consultation. Probably 15 million people in this country have it, both children and adults, I told him. It affects males more than females, probably in a ratio of about 3 to 1. We don't know what causes it exactly, but the best evidence is genetic. Okay, Jim said, I get what you're saying. What's the bottom line, though? Is there anything you can do for this? ADD people love bottom lines, I answered, laughing. It's always, get to the point. What's the next show? Where's the beef? Yeah, you're right, he said. I'm not big on scenery. I want to get there. Is that bad? I didn't mean to put you on the defensive, I said. I have ADD myself. I know how it feels. You have ADD? Jim asked, apparently taken aback. You seem so calm. Practice, I said, smiling. Actually, I'm sure for you there are times when you can be quite focused and relaxed, too. For me, doing this kind of work is one of those times. But the practice part is true also, and we'll get into more of that later. It wasn't long before Jim began to get into what is a large and very important part of ADD, although, strictly speaking, it is not part of the neurological syndrome itself. He started to talk about the secondary psychological problems that typically develop in the wake of the primary neurological problem of ADD.